Alright, so you watched my videos on basic automations and basic Zapier, and now you're looking to kick it up a notch? We're going to do that with Multi-Step Zaps. Okay, so what actually is a multi-step zap? So let's first define what a regular zap is. And I know, it's basic, we talked about it earlier. So a basic zap is of course just a basic trigger and an action. That's it. Just, you're gonna get some information and you're gonna do something with it. Basically that. A multi-step zap is realistically pretty similar to that concept, just longer and with more actions. So you're going to still have one single trigger, but instead of one action, you're going to have maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 20 different actions happening. So why would you break up your basic zap from just A to B to being A to however many different actions you might actually need? Well, there's one good reason. Your zap might need to do lots of different things as a part of the same process. For example, you might need to take in data from somewhere else, you might need to format it, you might need to filter things, and then you might need to pass that data into lots of different places, all as a part of the same process. Alright, so what are some of the components of a multi-step zap? Well, first and foremost, the components of a multi-step zap are realistically pretty much the same as a regular zap. There's not really anything different. The main things here are just that you have more of them as a part of your zap. So many multi-step zaps might include things like a filter, which just allows you to decide whether or not a process should continue based off of some sort of condition. It may also include something like a formatter step. And formatter just takes data in and does something with it and then provides you with an output. You may also be doing a search. So as I mentioned before, a search allows you to look inside of a tool, something like Salesforce or just whatever database tools you might be using, and pull information out that you can then use in later steps. The other thing that you might use as a part of your zap, if you're doing a multi-step zap, is what's called the delay by Zapier utility. So delay allows you to stop a process for a certain amount of time or up until a certain date and time, and then continue with the process at that point. Okay, so what are some examples of multi-step zaps? First off, just to give you an idea, you might be getting in some information. So maybe when somebody signs up or applies to your company, the next thing you might do as a part of that process is maybe put a filter. So if they are US or non-US, you might have them go through a different type of application. So there's two ways to handle that sort of a situation. Either A, you use filters and you create two multi-step zaps, one that filters and only goes forward for US candidates, and another one that filters and goes forward for non-US candidates. The other thing that you could do is use another feature provided by Zapier called paths. Paths allow you to do the similar thing that I mentioned a moment ago with two different zaps, except still just build it into one. So in this case, you would have two different possible paths. One where there's going to be a filter for only US candidates, and the other having a filter for non-US candidates, but still being a part of the same exact zap. I'll talk much more about all of these different advanced features, and especially things like paths, in its own specific video. Well, if we're going to follow down one of these paths, the next thing that might happen is that it might need to then send them an email and then add them to maybe your hiring database. So that would be two different actions. So you'd be creating an email and sending it to them, and then the next action might be then adding them to the database. So that's a pretty basic example, just using paths, filters, and a couple different regular actions. Let's talk about something like a delay or a formatter step. So let's just pretend that you're going through a process in a tool that you use like Trello. And as you move a card over to a particular list inside of Trello, that triggers your zap. At that point, what can happen is that you may have a formatter step, which needs to pull some information out of a field inside of Trello. Maybe you have something like an email address or a web address inside of that card that needs to be pulled out and used later. Okay, so then next, as a part of this process, maybe you have a delay. Maybe what needs to be done is that it needs to wait for a few days before it continues with that information. That's where you'll put a delay by Zapier step that's going to wait for, let's just say, a day or two. All right, what it's going to do is it's going to wait, and then at the end of that wait, it's going to go ahead and continue. And let's just say that once it's done, what it's going to do is send an email to that email address and maybe add a row to a Google Sheet. That would be two different actions, both basic actions, one going to Google Sheets and maybe one to Gmail. All right, so finally, I'm going to show you one of my most ridiculous multi-step zaps just so you get an idea of what's possible. All right, so for this example, this is actually from a previous startup that I used to run. So in order for people to sign up, what had to happen is that they had to complete a personality and interest survey. This is a 20-question Big Five analysis of their personality, as well as a little bit about their interests as well. So first off, what we have in here is the form itself. This is where people would fill out their basic information. And this is what it looks like on the back end. As you can see, people were able to fill out their basic information, their interests, their hobbies, and then also fill out their Big Five personality index. For this example today, this is really the most important part. So once they filled out this index, Zapier would trigger based off of a new row being added in Google Sheets automatically by Google Forms. The next thing that would happen is that we were splitting up that data into positive and negative items. That's just how you score this sort of a personality index. And that's using the formatter tool, just like this. Next, we were scoring the positive items, scoring the negative items, and then storing each of the values from those outputs. Next, we would split those values one more time, and then we were going in and actually scoring each of the different types of personality factors, those being openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. We did that using a formula inside of the Formatter by Zapier tool. So finally, once we scored all of those things, we would update a spreadsheet row in Google Sheets with all of those output values. Next, we would send an email to the participant with all of that data as an HTML formatted email. That email looked just like this. It tells you what your results are for your personality index automatically within about 2 minutes of you filling out the survey. Lastly, it updates the spreadsheet one more time using a lookup to pull data and then update it with that final data letting us know that the email was sent successfully and the data was stored successfully. This is one of my longest zaps, being about 18 steps. So don't be scared by how long this particular zap is. Yours don't have to be anywhere that difficult. However, this is just a good example of what you can do when you really use the full utility of multi-step zaps. Alright, so I hope that this video was helpful for you today because, Zapier can be a complicated and relatively complex thing to learn. So if you like this video, please make sure to subscribe below and comment and let me know what you think could be done better or what you liked as a part of this video. Thank you so very, very much for taking the time to watch me today. I really appreciate it, and well, have a wonderful day.